Alex, thank you so much for joining me at Can't Shovel Hurricanes. We're going to jump right into it because this is absolutely a hot topic. So when emigrating into a different country, specifically for me coming from Canada into the United States, there are major topics that we're always going to touch on. And each one of those topics, we can likely extrapolate for another,
Sure.
5-6 hours on subheadings. But one of the ones that is very often overlooked, and the one that we got very poor advice on and we're fighting through right now, is credit. And when we crossed the border, we were given some really poor advice and by people with ad hoc experiences. And I'm sure the credit world changes itself often. But
So it wasn't Border Patrol we're talking about?
No. We were stopped by them, ironically, with a U-Haul coming down. And what they saw is a 26-foot truck with kids' toys. But he's like, do you have this all itemized? I'm like, no. He goes, what do you do if I rip apart your truck? I'm like, you're getting a lot of toys. I hope you run and drive. Yeah. So he realized that we're not threatening and let us through. But from a credit perspective, I am well established in Canada. So is my wife. Solid credit. I'm not sure what the limit is. I'm in the high 7s or something like that. Never had any issues with financing. Got a whole bunch of investment properties in real estate. And when we came down here, we've essentially converted to being 18-year-old college kids, where we had zero credit and poor advice.
Of course.
Nobody really knows what they're talking about when it comes to credit. And credit is arguably a lot more important here than it is in Canada. It's super important in Canada.
Everything here.
But because of all the other things here that you need to pay for that you don't necessarily have to pay for in Canada, credit is incredibly important.
Yes.
So we got to like this aha moment where I'm like, oh my God, we got to use everything in cash and often. And it's a logistical nightmare when you're paying for kids' school, when you're paying for essentially everything. If you don't have the cash and in the bank banked, never mind opening up an account, and something that we could talk about as well. And I'm going to have another guest here from TD, which is a major bank in Canada, and we're going to have a discussion. But we were essentially told the instant you get your social security number, which took about 3 weeks after we landed in the United States, you had to touch down in the United States, present your visa and all the other documents in order to qualify. Went through all that process and then waited for that to arrive in the mail. They said, go to Nordstrom's, go to Macy's, go to these retail places and get these cards. It was an incredibly humbling experience. My wife and I roll up to Macy's and Nordstrom's at Boca Town Center, and we were rejected.
So humbled and embarrassed.
Embarrassed,
Is that what
yeah.
you're basically saying?
So then we went, okay, well, let's step this down. And we went to a TJ Maxx, I believe. Rejected.
Of course.
Not only now am I realizing that was a mistake, it also hit our credit as a credit check. So it brought our score down, making it even more difficult. So now we're like, okay, what happens from here? I wish I had met you,
Now you're gun shy. You don't want to do anything.
Right.
Knowing you have to.
I wish I had a chance to speak to the credit doctor, but that was the advice we had. We are still, this is a major uphill battle here. And
for everybody.
And it's something that people don't know anything about. But for people that are planning on immigrating, specifically from another country, when you're within the United States, I'm sure you can add a lot of value to people who need to improve their credit or want higher credit. But what do you tell people coming from other countries that want to move to the United States and South Florida, because I'm sure the same rules apply? Where would you tell them to start off, and how do you deal with your clients?
Okay, in regards to what you said, everybody is told the same things, all the wrong things to do. Now, obviously, for starters, you have to have a social security number. So that's not something I'm aware of how you went about doing it. You said it took 3 weeks.
I have something called, I have an E2 visa, but
Okay.
you basically need a work permit.
Okay, so you were able to get very quickly, actually.
Yeah,
So
well,
3
I'm
weeks.
legal, if that's what you mean.
That's,
I don't want anyone coming down here and thinking I got an illegal.
Well,
No,
see, and then
I'm
I'm
legal.
a retired Miami-Dade police officer.
That's right. I want to
That's
hear
why it's
all
not
about
Border
that as
Patrol.
well.
I was just curious.
You're retired, isn't it? Can you still arrest people?
No, but I can get you arrested pretty quickly with a couple calls.
I appreciate that.
So
Thank you.
I don't have any issues with you. I like you, so we're good. So you got to have a social security number, and basically a credit file is very simple. I start with the word credit. Credit is a Latin word and basically means trust. So when I give you credit, it's because I trust that and hope that and pray to God that you're going to pay me back. whether it be a credit or a mortgage, a credit card, a car payment, whatever it is.
Gotcha.
So once you have a file, and in order to have a file, that file consists of the first time you apply. So what ended up happening? You started off bad right from the beginning. So you had an empty file with nothing in it with a bunch of inquiries. Inquiries are places that you've gone to apply for credit. And every time you do that, as you mentioned, your scores go down. It's 10% of your credit score. And probably best I explained to you, 10% of your credit score doesn't sound like a lot, but when you have a 0 score, you're obviously double 0 now. So what you want to do when you first start, you mentioned Macy's. Actually, that was my first account.
Macy's.
Yes, that was my first account. And it was actually a good thing because Macy's is connected with some major creditors. So if you do good with Macy's, other people say, hey, if you did good with Macy's, I'll give him a shot. I'll send him out a credit card. So what ends up happening is now you have this little $200 credit limit with Macy's.
Right.
And about 6 months later, you start receiving card requests. And I don't know. Want me to mention names? I mean, if we
do it. There's no limits to what you can talk about unless you have a limit.
Unless they want to start paying me, and I'll throw out their names.
Well, we've already said Macy's multiple times. Exactly. By the way, Macy's sponsorship, just let you know.
Exactly.
Okay, yeah.
Capital One, just by the way, we're available.
If you're listening.
But actually, Capital One, American Express, all those, I have all the Capital Ones. I have all the American Expresses. I love those. Actually, those are two great companies to have a good association with.
Okay.
But most people today, I mean, I'm 60 years old. So Capital One wasn't really a player back then. It was your Visa cards and your MasterCards.
Right.
And I didn't know anything at that time. But I got a Visa card from my local bank and slowly started getting more and more people soliciting for, hey, you've done good with Macy's. Hey, you've done good with these people. How about you give us a shot? So I started getting smaller credit cards, $200, $500, $1,000 limits. I had a good job. I worked for IBM for 10 years it was my first job at 18. My father was a retired IBMer, so I was the youngest ever hired in that company at that time here in Coral Gables. I'm from
Does IBM,
Miami.
did they have a headquarter here?
In Coral Gables at that time.
Okay.
I mean, at that time, I was 1980. IBM was today's Apple, Microsoft.
Yeah,
I mean, we invented the computer. And the internet. So at that time, I was able to do a lot of cool things. But at 18, making a bunch of money, living at home, all I could do is spend my money. So buying cars, motorcycles, boats.
You rolled up here in a Prowler.
Dressing up nice for the ladies. I've always had a tendency to, try to, I work hard, so I
play hard.
I play hard.
All right.
So little by little, I was at a point where I could pretty much get anything I wanted as long as I paid my bills. And what ends up happening is the more you get and the more abilities to spend, you tend to do that. So
now, what do you mean the more you get? The more credit cards you get, the more credit you get?
The more availability to credit. Let's call it that.
So the more availability to credit you have, your affinity or your credit score goes up?
Depending on how you handle it.
Yeah, okay, assuming that you're paying on time.
Well, for example, it's very easy to get into trouble. So here I was getting all these people coming at me saying, hey, I'll give you money. Hey, I'll give you a car. Hey, I'll give you a mortgage. I'll give you whatever you want. If in one short period of time I've done that, I mean, I only have a certain amount of money that I make on a monthly basis. So what ends up happening is literally, I mean, luckily for me, my mom, my dad taught me very responsibly to not get myself in debt. But at 18, I screwed up. Almost.
You didn't have it figured out at 18?
No.
Okay.
So, I'm still working on these things.
All right.
But even as the credit doctor, and I'll tell you a little bit about that. But I had a major credit card, I had a nice brand new car, I had a brand new motorcycle, and I was trying to buy a boat.
Okay.
Well, I only had so many parking spaces and stuff to do. So I was just overwhelmed with all this credit. I figured, hey, if they're giving it to me, I'll do it. Right. So what ends up happening, I started getting into debt, which sucks. Because getting into debt, now you don't sleep as good because if you only make X amount of dollars at the end of the month and you've got to dish out those X plus, you're in a deficit. And at 18, 19 years old, it's kind of like a little overwhelming. So you have to start figuring those things out. So at the end of the day, what you want to do is you want to start off slowly. You want to get a major credit card.
Right.
Let's start with Macy's because that's probably the only thing you can get.
I still don't qualify, FYI.
We are going to make you qualify.
What I've done, I got a couple of secured cards that I started
that's
getting, and that's what I'm building. I'm starting to get these things that you're saying in the mail.
What companies? Capital One's
First
Progress,
Progress,
Premiers,
one card. I just did one for with TD as a secured card where we held a GIC, the equivalent to the amount of credit. I've now managed to get my social security number backed into my mortgage.
Oh, good. So it's appearing
because it was done via Canada, and I am militant about paying my bills. Not militant is an understatement. I have major anxiety on it. I probably mention it to my wife once a week. Did you pay your credit card bill? Did you pay? I end up doing it, but I still tell her because it helps me verbalize. I track my credit score almost every 2 to 3 days. I'm at like 650 right now.
How do you do that?
I do it via the First Progress card. There's a link within the dashboard that says click here to view your credit score, and I kind of watch it, and it incrementally goes up. I don't know if I'm hurting my own credit, which is one of my questions here.
I was going to actually turn around on you. Is every time you look at it dropping your scores, or is it
it's
part
not
of the service that
it's not? I think
what they call a soft.
Exactly. I think it's a soft pull. I came from a banking background, so some of the terminology means that it's not like a thorough credit check where they pull up my credit bureau.
Do you know the difference between a hard inquiry and a soft one?
I actually do. I do.
Tell
because
me your definition.
When it comes to a hard credit pull, they're looking at, it's essentially a financial colonoscopy where they're looking at everything that you've ever done, delinquencies, missed payments, past due payments, overall assessment, which is something I look because of my real estate background and how many investors I work with and have constantly work with, and how many investors I'm going to be working with here in South Florida. There's good debt and there's bad debt. The debt you're talking about is cars and boats and motorcycles. There is
usually lose money on those.
Well, those are, first of all, I don't want to call them depreciating assets because they're not really assets.
Not every time, sure.
Right? They are things that give you marginal utility. You enjoy them. There's something to be said about them, but they don't generate revenue unless you're,
That's
renting them out.
Right.
Whereby when you're buying real estate, which is my area of expertise, load up on credit as much as you possibly can and have somebody else pay that credit and rinse, repeat. And this is why I know a lot of people that are renting that I'm saying, have you been pre-qualified? Do you know what you can buy? Because if you can come up with a down payment and you can pay off your own mortgage or have somebody else even do it, stay a tenant, but at least somebody else paying it, like you're going to start digging out. But the stuff you're talking about is, I mean, it's bad credit. But
let's touch on that. I mean, and I apologize if every once in a while I'm going to stop you.
Shoot.
Especially when you're saying things that everybody else is saying, and it's kind of, I think people want to know a little more in detail. Everything you just mentioned about if you're renting and heck, if you have a down payment stuff, well, guess what? You can have all the money in the world. You can have them in cash. And in what you just said, you probably have to have cash because technically, if you just got here from another country, you don't have a social security number.
That's right.
But you're wealthy. You can buy anything. You've always done that.
Yeah.
But you got no credit here.
Right.
You can't walk into anywhere and buy a bicycle.
Great.
Because they're going to look at you and say, well, we don't have no idea of who you are and how you spend your money and where you've been and where do you live and stuff. We get that information from a credit report.
Well, this is why I find baffling because it's credit is more important than cash here. It's what
you don't need cash if you've got credit.
Bingo. And
it gives you the opportunities to buy the same things you just said. In fact, anything, as long as you're making enough money to justify the payment.
So when we talk about the hot topics, like people want to hear about guns, people want to hear about schooling, people want to hear about taxes, people want to hear about medical, and
you
then
like
credit.
Guns? You like
I like
schooling?
guns.
You like all that stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I'd love a world that doesn't have any, but since people have them, I think other people should have them, and it's like anything, it's like if we didn't have guns, we're probably even saying, do you like knives? Like it takes one fucking lunatic to do something stupid. And then the rest of us are paying for it. I'm when in Rome, I'm in your land. I respect your rules. But when it comes to like credit, people don't give it enough due. And to come here, we had to build a business plan. Like we had to have a lot of things prepared. Nobody was talking about the importance of credit. And I'd arguably say it is more important than anything else that you do. And you have to set the table in the beginning. Absolutely.
Planning period was more important.
And if I would have known that somebody like you existed, it would have been the first investment because you can actually tally up the investments of that you put in the United States.
I would have set you up so that the moment you stepped in and you had your social, you were on your way to becoming a credit score monster.
Bingo. Which is
Which is
why
what I
we're,
am.
yeah. But that's what, like, so you're the oldest credit repair company in the United States.
Let me share that with you.
Please.
My company is called The Credit Doctor. I started The Credit Doctor in 1996. My company, I'm on my 26th year of business. My company, The Credit Doctor, is the oldest credit repair company in the United States of America.
All right.
I consider myself one of the pioneers of the credit repair industry.
Okay.
I like to call it credit score enhancement because
Okay.
credit repair sometimes has a bad
Negative connotation.
Not with me, because I have a perfect reputation, and it's because the people that I can help, I help, and the ones I can't, I tell them I can't, and I make sure that they don't have someone promise them something that they are not going to get delivered and rip them off.
Is that happening in your industry?
Everybody knows me, and I've got a good reputation, so they just call, and before they even take a chance of doing something wrong, they are usually told that, hey, you may want to look into, back then a credit doctor didn't even exist.
Right.
Google gave me that title. I'm the one who actually created that because it didn't exist. Credit repair had some stuff, but the credit doctor was all me, and that's that trademark is mine. So what ends up happening is I have all this great credit, and nobody really knows what to do with it.
Define great credit. What's the credit scoring system?
You mentioned to me earlier that your score was 630 something.
657.
Sucks.
Yeah, I know. It says good, but I know it's
If you're having
shit.
a conversation with me, I
I know.
I can't be more blunt that
I am a
that
refugee in this country that is starting from scratch.
And I'm not, and I don't say that in a mean way, but meaning with a 650, you cannot buy.
Are you going to help me fix my credit?
You're going to be you're going to love me forever. And so will anybody who's listening, whoever calls me, I
know
promise
they
you
will.
that you will. And I say this, I told you about the 26 years of doing what I'm doing. There is no one, and I'll say this publicly because there's nobody going to challenge me. There is no one on this planet that has a higher credit score than the guy you're talking to.
Okay. Oh, so are you in the
my
Guinness Book of Records?
That's my claim to fame.
Okay.
And ironically, you said the Guinness World Book of Records. What can you do with that when you have the nearly perfect credit score? What is the perfect credit score? Do you know?
800?
850.
Okay.
Ask me if I'm perfect.
Are you perfect?
I am not perfect.
Why?
I'm about 11 points away from becoming
So
perfect.
okay.
Actually, 11,
So-
12. 837, 838, 839. So technically 11, 12, and 13 points from being perfect. Ask me how many people on this planet Earth have a perfect credit score.
How many
Percentage-wise.
people? As a percentage? Oh, wow. Okay.
What's the percentage
What's
of
the percentage of
people?
people
Hundreds of millions. We're talking about 300 million people.
have a perfect credit score?
No. Of that pool, 300 million, how many in a percentage would you say has
2.
perfect
Two.
credit? It's 1. Less than 1. Where I'm at, we're probably less than 2% of the human population that has a score like me. And in that, I'm the best.
Oh, wow.
And no one's ever challenged me on it. And if they'd like to, they can call my office anytime they like, and we can play a great game that I'm about to play.
What privileges does that entitle you to have that kind of credit score?
For me, it's bragging rights.
Okay.
Because I'm the credit doctor. If I'm not the best at what I do, then why would you listen? Why would you pay me to help you become the best at what it is, whatever it is that you're trying to become?
All right. So I, as a new client, want to I engage your services. Okay. High level, without giving away your secret sauce, which is not what I'm looking for by any stretch.
It's no secret. It's just how I prepare the meal.
How do you start a new client?
The ingredients are the same. It's just how I prepare the meal. Mine always tastes the best. Because we can all cook it, but some taste better than
So
others.
people coming over from,
Anywhere.
Canada, right? What should they do first?
And I say that just call me. Why?
Yeah.
Because I want to save you a lot of time and effort, and at least let me speak to you for a little bit and tell me what it is that you want to do. What are your plans? Do you want to come here and you want to buy property and you don't plan to live here and you just want to have it as investment, or are you planning to move here?
So the
because you have
overwhelming
to leave?
majority of people that I'm gonna engage as well, I talk to vis-a-vis my real estate team and my network, and what the intention is from the development side is to buy as much real estate and serve the community as possible, meaning create incredible housing for an aging stock of existing units. There's a real problem in that in certain counties and needs to be addressed because a lot of the existing stock isn't to code, is dated. There's also...
Or abandoned, right? Is that what you're looking for? Like
not necessarily abandoned, but wherever there's opportunity to be able to create an affordable housing stock for people at the highest level.
affordably.
Yeah, I mean, affordable is a relative term.
These days,
right? There's no rent control here
exactly.
in South Florida. But
We're
there's
getting
certainly
as much as they can get.
But you also like I've been a landlord,
people.
still a landlord for multiple properties, and I could tell you from my own experience that the quality of individual living in the property is equally as important as to the net
100%.
result of the yield. Right?
Absolutely.
I don't go out and gouge because I know somebody's really taking care of an asset.
Exactly.
They're easy and not. I don't have to talk to them on a regular basis. If there's a problem, they reach out. I get it fixed, and a lot of times they fix it, and I just pay them. Well, what was the amount? I took care of it.
Anything under $100, hey,
And for me to raise those rents would be asinine. It would be a bad business, right? I mean, and there's people that do things differently. That's the choice I decide to make.
Slumlord, you're a landlord.
Yeah, but you know what? I want to be able to create as much credit for myself. And I also want to know, do you deal with corporations or businesses and help them establish credit? Because that's the other problem that we have.
And since you don't know about the two, what ends up happening is your personal credit is handled through Equifax, Experian, TransUnion.
Yes.
Dun & Bradstreet. Have you heard of Dun & Bradstreet?
Of course, yes.
Dun & Bradstreet is the credit bureau for businesses.
Right.
You know, that's there are other services out there, but that's the one that everybody knows, DNB. So it's the same thing, but you will never have a DNB unless you have, a business or whatever. And to start that business, you start with your personal credit. So what ends up happening is you're the guarantor for a piece of paper. You can have the baddest business on the planet that generates billions of dollars, but if nobody knows you and you're not established, you start with a piece of paper called Articles of Incorporation.
So I'm going to keep probing you. How do you get started?
So in that incorporation, you will maybe buy that property, that car, or an office building, whatever it is you're trying to do. And I will work with you on that depending on what your needs are. I want to put you in the right direction. But you're going to guarantee the loan for your business. So you're going to have an incorporation or not, doing business as whatever you're doing. And Ronan will be the guarantor. So over a period of time, Ronan's credit is developing, and now is also his business, depending on his expenses. So what I would tell you to do is, hey, get a cellular service, to not mention names, but any of the cellular services, anybody who will report to the bureaus. Get your cell phones, your communications devices, your video, whatever it is that you do, the building, anybody who is going to report on your credit bureau to show that you are responsible and you're handling your debts responsibly. And the more you ask for and the more you pay, you're getting some stability, and people are depending on you to do that. And also for that reason, they will reward you with more credit. But you are now developing your personal, because you're asking me for businesses, right? Because
I want to know both. The truth is,
you got to have both.
Yeah, look, from the real estate perspective, I'll likely be opening up, I think, an LLC dependent to each asset I buy.
Do not say LLC.
Why?
LLCs right now have a bad name. Why? Because
I think my accountant will have an argument with you, but
well, you're legit. The bad about the LLC is there's a lot of illegitimate people.
So are you saying they're opening
LLCs.
up to purchase it personally?
They are setting it up because allegedly, and I say this very loosely as a previous law enforcement officers, is that a lot of scams are always done. And what they do is before they do the scam, the first thing is that you don't want to get caught. So you're told, hey, let's do an LLC. It protects you. It's, they can't sue you. They can't do it. And their doctors are told this. Anybody who might have a lot of money and might lose it if they do something stupid or if they get caught doing something they shouldn't be doing.
Right.
So we set up an LLC. LLC, you want to explain what an LLC is?
Well, I'm not an expert, but it's a limited liability company that basically says that I, as an individual, is held harmless in case something happens in that property. But I mean,
but you're an officer in that LLC, correct?
Absolutely.
Then
but
you are the LLC, correct?
Well, the answer to that, again, I'm only speaking from my own experience. I'm not
as you should.
providing any legal or accounting advice.
And neither am I.
And LLCs are treated very differently in Canada than they are in the United States, based on my understanding. So here, I don't know if there's a good or bad to it. I think there's tax implications that are more important in this conversation that I certainly can't speak to. But what I do know is, like, let's say Mrs. Smith slips and falls in one of the properties that I own. Now, if it's under Ronan Fishman, she can now sue me personally and attack personal assets as well as the ones that she's residing in. Is, let's say it's a tenant or somebody who walks in front, slips and falls, which happens in Canada because it gets icy sometimes.
Which, by the way, she's not suing you. Her insurance company, who has
to
pay for
somebody's
whatever.
going after personal assets, right? I'm sure I have insurance and any other. But what that means is that if you go, if I have it personally, then they can attack me. If it's not piercing the corporate veil, if it's in an LLC, whoever the individual doing the suing can only attack the assets within that LLC
that they can find. So it's
right.
You're an LLC. So if they can find the LLC, LLC and Ronan are going to be sued. Every person that has any connection to your LLC is going to be sued. Your secretary, your treasurer, however many people, they're all going to be sued.
So what I'm going to do
we're
is
looking for money.
We're
looking for money.
I'm going to be interviewing some legal experts as well as some accountants that
we need to get them in here.
And absolutely will.
I'm going to love to tear them.
You know what I'm going to do? When I'm on your podcast
X,
I'm gonna
haven't started yet, but it's gonna come up real soon.
I'm going to be better equipped for this conversation. But I want to go to what is applicable to the listener for the most part.
Sure.
I'm 675 credit score.
Okay.
What credit score should I be to be deemed good or better than good, and how do I get there?
I am no one to tell you that. Well, the person who's going to tell you that is the creditor of whom you're trying to get credit. They're going to have a minimum credit score that you must have to qualify.
Right, but as a credit doctor, how do you help me build my credit and my numbers?
The first thing we're going to do when anybody calls my office is I'm going to give you information so that you can get us a no obligation, all 3 credit reports from Equifax, Experian, TransUnion. It'll cost usually $1 for 7 days that the company that I work with will provide us.
Okay.
What that does is gives me the ability to look at all 3 credit bureaus and how anyone who is looking to give you credit is going to judge you. Your credit is a reflection of who you are. And I tell people this all the time. As a police officer, if I look at your police record, it says a lot of things about you. You may say, I didn't do that, or whatever the case is. Well, it's the same thing with a credit report. I look at it exactly the same way my eyes look at it the same. So if it's saying to me that your name has different variations, you have a name. So, God and your mom and dad gave you. It's on your birth certificate. If you have any other variations, other than being a woman, because a woman, when she gets married, she has maidens and she has her married name. But men, we have one name that we were born with. If I see variations, the first thing I'm going to ask is why. And most of the time you get a variation, most people say, well, I don't know how that happened. Well, when you applied for credit, a human being made an error and they misspelled your name. If it's not what the credit bureau is used to seeing, it's going to create a variation, also known as an AKA, as an alias. Okay. So as a police officer,
never thought about
AKA.
that angle. Okay.
Oh, absolutely. So there's lots of things that we look at. Also, to look at your address. We all live in one place, right? That's normal. Now, if you look on a credit application, it doesn't say to you how many names you have, but it does say how long you've lived at your current address. Have you lived there? Some say more than 2 years, less than 5 years, whatever. The reason they do that is because they're looking for stability. So if you're a person who has one name, no alias, you have one address, one employer, one social, one date of birth, I don't really have too many questions to ask. But again, I always go back to my police background, and I always tell people, the more questions I have to ask, the worse off it's going to be. It's not going to work out, because if it's obvious to me, there's no questions. It's going to be simple.
Right.
But when I have to ask you, why do you have 3 different names? Why do you have a different address on your driver's license than is on your credit report? And again, this goes back to they both intertwine. So when I go back and forth, it's the same thing. What's your address? And the first thing you're going to send me is your address, wherever you're staying. Okay, let's just say. The next question is going to be, is that address on your driver's license? I'm going to say 80% of the time, people say, what? No. Okay, here comes question number one. Why? Well, it's very simple. And I always know the answers, but I'm just curious to see how you're going to express to me the reason why it doesn't match. The only answer is, man, you know what? The law gives me 15 days to do that legally because if I get stopped, whatever. But I don't want to do that because, listen, I owed some people some money. They're looking for me. Or, hey, I'm at an ex-girlfriend's house. I just got divorced. I'm just kind of like temporarily doing this. Okay, it doesn't, listen, things happen. Shit happens, okay? But just be honest. Just live your life honest without worrying so much about what other people are going to think of you. And I say that's kind of like a general, everybody says that. But just be what you are. So if you're moving 10 times in a month, well, then go and change your address on your driver's license 10 times. So that when I ask you where you live, does it match with your driver's license? You just say yes. Because otherwise, you're going to be asked questions. And in credit, it's the same thing, except instead of a police officer being inquisitive and trying to figure out what's really going on, an algorithm, the credit bureaus, look at it exactly the same way, except it's a computer. You and I can have a conversation. I can figure out that, hey, you're a stand-up guy, and hey, something happened. But a computer doesn't know that. It starts to talk. Everything that I've just said to you in the last few minutes, a computer is saying to itself, I don't really trust a lot of this guy. The stability doesn't look right. Some of these questions aren't going to be answered. So it scores you less. So as I'm working on your file, when we work together, is I'm building stability so that when other people look at you, they look at you as someone who is going to be a good chance of me getting paid back every time.
Okay.
As opposed to asking you all these questions that I've asked you, which is kind of ridiculous. As opposed to, what's your name? What's your address? Do you have a previous address, less than 5 years? Yes. Where do you work? And by the way, that's on your credit report too, where you've worked. So on the address, if you have 8 addresses on your credit report, now that we've determined where you physically live, I'm going to ask you, well, how about this one? How about this one and the other 6? And you're going to tell me, oh, well, I used to live there or whatever. Oh, I used to live there. Then why are they on your credit report?
Oh, so that's an excellent tip.
It's
the
very
address
important.
Consistency, great. What about someone who's immigrated who has no history at
That's
all,
fine.
like me?
No credit is better than bad credit.
Okay.
You're
How do
gonna
you
hear that a million
build
times.
properly?
We're going to make sure you have a driver's license or an ID. Okay, so let's get you an
That's
ID.
your ID's on your credit
a
report.
flo-
Your driver's license is on your credit.
Well, you either have a driver's license. What if you don't drive?
Yeah.
You can get a Florida ID. Get a Florida identification card. So you have a driver's license and a Florida identification card are 2 different things.
Okay. I didn't even know one existed.
I don't say you have to go drive. No, but I do have to know who you are.
Okay.
And most people want to know when you.
So your
apply.
credit bureau knows whether you have a driver's license.
No, it does not.
Okay.
It knows because on the credit application, it will ask you for a driver's license or an ID number.
Okay.
So depending on which one you are is what's
Gotcha.
going to be on there. All these things are going to be on there. What is going to be the key elements are your name, your address, your employer. And again, if you've got 8 addresses, it kind of tells me you're either unstable or you just didn't know that having 6 or 8 addresses on a credit report hurts you. Well, I'm going to let you know it does.
I have one address.
You're going to be good, and you're fine. You're
Okay.
good. So far, you and I are good. But always throw me the worst case scenario because that's what I give you so that you understand the logic, not because it's coming out of my mouth, but because because of my credit score, obviously I know what I'm doing. I'm a human algorithm, so I know what it looks at when it's looking at you.
How long will it take an immigrant using your services, following the path and the framework that you build out to establish
A decent score.
decent or better, like being able to
Get
get
credit.
cards in
Whatever they want.
Macy's or a car or a mortgage?
Right.
How long will it take?
I always tell people, what kind of a score is going to get you all these things? Probably anything over a 740.
740.
720, a lot of people say 40. 740, I've rarely seen anybody get turned down for credit with 740, as long as they don't have late payments and or any negative history.
Okay.
So the score means nothing if you have some recent history, or for that matter, any history. If you have a bankruptcy, it's going to affect you technically for 10 years.
Okay.
7 years on a credit report and 10 years as a public record. So depending on what you're trying to get, if you're trying to buy a house and you don't disclose, hey, I have a bankruptcy, but it was over 7 years old. Nobody sees it. It's not on my credit report, but it is a public record. And when you buy a home in the state of Florida, they're going to pull just on your name, see if you have any liens or judgments or anything
Right.
against you. So there's a lot of things to look at that I'm going to advise you on. And if I've done my job properly and ask you the right questions, and you tell me what your immediate goals are,
Right.
I can customize your life when it comes here very easily into where you can, if you have cash, most people say, well, I've got enough cash to just buy everything. Well, I don't want you to do that. What we'll do is we're going to go into, we're going to get you that secured credit card. We're going to go to, I want you to establish, first thing I want you to do is establish a relationship with a bank of your choosing.
Okay.
I have some that are more favorites than others, but let's just say that you find the one that you're comfortable with. And a good bank would be somebody that is talking to you the way I am. Tell me what you want to do. I'm going to tell you how to put your money where so that I can offer you whatever it is that you want to buy.
And what kind of time frame are you looking at?
Depending on how you do this,
Yeah.
very quickly, I can get you into a car. I can get you into a mortgage. I can get you into anything.
I'm
based
talking
on
about
how
hitting
much-
that 740 mark that you mentioned.
There's no such thing. There's no way to know that. That will come with time. And usually about 6 months, I've seen people to do exactly what I've told them to do, within 6 months, have that score.
Really?
Sometimes even higher. Depends. If you're a person who has not a lot of, not a lot of money, and you just got a little $200 credit card, and you bought it at a buy here, pay here lot, a car, and you're just kind of barely making it, you're not really showing your ability to make large payments. A guy like you, he has a little more money maybe in the bank, and has a higher limit because part of the algorithm, it doesn't know how much money you make. But based on your spending, it assumes, I can assume anything in a second just by looking at your credit report. I know what your name is. I know where you live. Are you stable? Do you stay in that place? I can tell by the name of the business that you work at, your employer, kind of like what you do. I can look at your inquiries and see if you're out there applying for credit everywhere, all the time, trying to get credit everywhere. And I can tell you, obviously, if you were denied or not. If you went 10 inquiries and you've got only one open account, that means 9 people said no to you. That doesn't look good. Now, if you have 10 inquiries and you got 10 new accounts and they all gave it to you, man, you're a superstar. That's the guy. That's the person that I want you to be.
So what I'm hearing is, sorry to interject.
No, all you want.
Open up as many possible secured cards.
No.
No.
Pick one secured account so that you get your first credit card.
Right.
We talked earlier about Macy's. It could be anybody, but I want
You can't get a secured card at Macy's. Take it from my experience.
Exactly. No,
I
that doesn't
opened one up
exist.
for Canadians listening, I would tell you the process that I used, and then I walked into a TD, made my first deposit across the border in the United States, and it was having a social security number. I built a relationship, like you mentioned, from that branch that was close to my house. I got a secured card from them, but my first credit card came via TD using my Canadian credit because I had a higher limit. And then some banks here don't do secured cards. Chase, for example, don't do secured cards. And
They've tried. It didn't work out well for them.
So, and I don't understand how secured card goes belly up, to be honest with you. I don't get it.
I'll tell you in a sec.
Please tell me, how does a secured
It's
card go
very
belly
simple.
up?
Everybody says, well, I gave you $5,000
Right.
to put in your bank, and you gave me $5,000 limit. Well, guess what? I'll go out and I'll put a down payment on a car. I'll walk into a dealership, and I put it on my credit card.
Okay.
$5,000 down payment. All right, that's today. This is on Thursday.
Okay.
Let's say Friday. Perfect. Friday. Banks and stuff are closed usually, Saturdays and Sundays, and depending on what bank. Now I turn around and I go to Macy's.
Okay.
And I get a Macy's card. Because guess what? My new car payment is not being reported. The inquiry that I made on the car doesn't necessarily mean I got the car. So they don't know if I put $5,000 on there yet. I haven't made my first payment on a credit card, so it hasn't been reported that I even owe $5,000. A lot of people don't really know for a couple of days. And depending on the creditor, a person like me, it does. I'll figure things out very quickly, but the average Joe doesn't because it's a computer. But you can go out and spend $8,000 over that weekend.
But not more than the credit limit on that card.
Absolutely, you can. Why? Because
you use it as a deposit, but they haven't charged the card?
Some companies, depending on their, on their policies, will allow you to overspend it, thinking that you're going to pay, obviously. So sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. So the one time that you just said that, well, you know, how did they do it? It happens all the time. You go to your bank account, you can write a check. They'll pay it, but guess what happens? You have a fee, right? So depending on how often you do that and the relationship you have, they may never say no to paying that check, but you're going to have hundreds and hundreds of dollars of fees. So it all goes back to the relationships that you have and how you go about doing it. The average person, the person who does things the right way with no malice, is never going to have any issues. But a crook, and we live in South Florida, and you just got
So yeah, I really want
scam. This is the capital of scam.
Between your policing background, and I've been hearing that medical scams, all kinds of things, and it's
Mortgage,
just like
medical.
It's just stuff that I'm hearing.
It's horrible.
Through your, so what is it specifically that you did for the force when you worked?
I was a patrol officer.
Okay.
Worked on specialized units.
Okay.
And you know, economic crimes, narcotics, regular, you know, life's problems.
And you're going to be at Miami-Dade's next.
If God willing, in 2024, Miami-Dade County is going to elect a sheriff.
Okay.
And we haven't had a sheriff in almost 60 years. So
why is that?
In the 60s, there was reported corruption in the sheriff's office.
Okay.
And a lot of allegations were made, and a lot of people lost their jobs. There were many sheriffs that were appointed, and unfortunately, there was no longer any trust in the sheriff's office, and then in an elected position. So the commission basically, everybody voted to just remove the sheriff and make it an appointed position, which is usually in our cases from the mayor.
Okay.
And that mayor has been the acting sheriff all along. So what ends up happening is, as you know, any nepotisms and whatever, you know, friends and family, depending on who you know, they're going to be appointed to do whatever it is that their agenda is going to work out.
Right.
So in an appointed position, you can only do so much. As a director for the Miami-Dade Police Department, a director it's the man or the woman. They're the ones who run the place and make all the decisions. And important decisions as a police officer need to be made without hesitation. You've got to sometimes do things that aren't going to be popular. But as a director, you can't, because otherwise you will lose your job. So the difference between a director, which is what we have being appointed, is that you're basically a puppet to the man, you know, mayor, whoever your bosses are. The sheriff is going to be elected. So that person will be the most powerful person in Miami-Dade County. The sheriff is going to be the most powerful person on that woman or man who gets elected. And they're going to have the abilities to make these calls that are tough, that affect our officers, affect our communities, and our citizens. It's going to be a good thing for us. So finally, we're going to give some responsibility to somebody who can handle it. I hope it's going to be, well, I can handle it. I just hope that they will elect me, and I will earn that. But that's coming up soon, and hopefully that we're going to have a couple conversations about.
Oh, I want to hear all about it, because crime,
it's going to be very, very good,
and all that stuff. Although I'm in Palm Beach County, I mean,
and you all have a great sheriff. I mean, it's everybody.
So there is a sheriff in Palm Beach County.
This is the crazy thing. We have 67 counties in the state of Florida. 66 of them have a sheriff, an elected sheriff. I keep saying elected. Okay, that person has a lot more power than an appointed person. Miami-Dade County is the only county in the state of Florida that does not have an elected sheriff. However, it's the biggest county. It's the most powerful county in any election year. If you don't win Miami-Dade County, you don't become president of the United States. That's how much pull Miami-Dade.
Okay. Wow.
In order to become the president of the United States, I'll say it, you must win Miami-Dade. You must. So that person, whoever that sheriff is, who has a lot of responsibilities, and one of them is always to protect our dignitaries and stuff like that. It's important to take care of Miami-Dade County and the residents. And right now, we're not. You know, things are not safe. Things are tough right now, and we need a sheriff to make some tough calls, because right now crime is out of control, and there are no leaders who are able to make some tough decisions, and that's going to change when I become sheriff.
Well, listen, if I lived in that county, you'd have my vote if I was even allowed to vote. But I'm glad. First of all, I think you have a very unique perspective from a financial acumen perspective, how that ties into fraud. And this topic, and we can extrapolate and probably speak, you know.
And we should.
And we will, I guarantee.
Because a lot of people are going to learn a lot of things. Not only for the victims of these crimes, or people think it's them. If it's a physical crime, then yes, you're a victim. But in financial crime, the victim is the creditor. So one of the biggest issues is that when there's a financial fraud of any kind committed, you call the police, and the police says, "Well, I can't write a report. I don't know who perpetrated the crime." No victim, no crime. And whoever hasn't heard that and is upset because the police officer wouldn't do whatever. If there is a victim, there is a crime.
Well, the victim is the individual. It would be me if I was,
But are you really the victim? Because you're going to turn around and do what? You're going to call their credit card company and you're going to file a claim.
It's going to reflect my credit bureau and my credit score.
No, not at all.
Really?
You're a victim. You're a valid victim. The way it'll happen is you're going to be, and I tell people this all the time, always get a police report. I mean, listen, the worst case scenario, they're going to write a report, an incident report of some kind. But get it documentation. A lot of people don't do it either because they think that the police aren't going to do it or that they're not important enough for us to do it. And that's not the case because you are important. You are everything to us. So what you'll do is you'll have a police report. When you call your credit card company, you say, "Hey, I've had fraud." And they, at this point, you really don't know who committed the crime. It doesn't really matter. I have a credit card. I have protections. They're going to ask you for a police report. Okay? You have to have a police report.
So I think the topic I really want to expand as well is how to protect yourself from this sort of crime, which is
inquiries.
I think that it goes a lot deeper than people assume. I think it also hits a more aging population.
It's an easier victim
to
go after.
And it's a real problem because
here it's
once
enormous.
It's with you, it follows you like a stink.
It
can. And it could be terrifying. I mean, if people have access,
it could be criminal. You could be arrested for something you have not done. That's
wow.
You will. How about losing your freedom? It doesn't get any worse than that.
No.
And people do it. People are arrested all the time because they can't prove that they did not do something. So
you say losing your freedom. I
know
there's going to be people listening to this who are going to say it's one of the reasons I left Canada.
Correct.
Because that's how I felt.
That's a terrible thing.
And then you got a lot of people that are like, "You're nuts. What freedoms did you lose? Did you,
They have
and
no
again,
clue
conversation for a
how
whole
good they
lot.
have it,
but I think it depends on what segment or what stage and demographic you are in your life.
Sure.
And there is a big shift within the United States and within North America, and specifically within Canada, of people moving down to the United States, and South Florida has been the major recipient of that population. It's usually Canadians are great.
Love us. Who doesn't love Florida? I mean, this is a great place.
There's a lot of people that have a very negative connotation of Florida, and that's what the premise of the
podcast
podcast
on your show
is.
so we can talk about it.
I'm talking about it because here's the things I've heard from very close
Those are the people I want to talk to.
How
Give me
can
those
you
people.
bring your kids down here? There's guns everywhere, and it's dangerous. And here's what I'm saying. I'm not saying no. These are legitimate fears that I still have, we have, but I want to talk about how it parlays into day-to-day life here.
We can role play. Actually, we can role play. You can be that person. We can do it. We can do it right now if you want. Be that person with whatever concerns. And I'm going to try to make you feel a little more comfortable in making the right choices.
And here's the thing. We will do this again. I do not want to rush it because it's such a hot topic with so many pressure points.
I could be here all you want. And this topic we could talk about all day.
And we will. I want to do it on your podcast. You're going to be on here again. I appreciate your time. How can people find you, and where can they connect with you as the credit
Again,
doctor?
my company's called The Credit Doctor. You can Google me. You can hashtag my name, hashtag Alex Fornet, ALEXFORNET, and you will see everything that I'm associated with. Like I said, I'm a former police officer. I'm running for sheriff. I build survival vehicles.
You showed me. That's so cool. Like that is so.
And for people who don't know what a survival vehicle, I've coined the phrase because that really didn't exist. I call it a USV, which is an urban survival vehicle. And what a USV is, and I just built my first prototype.
I saw it. I saw the video.
And it's badass.
Yeah.
And what it is, it's an extended Mercedes-Benz Sprinter van, all black, very military looking, kind of it's got that whole stealthy thing to it. And on the inside, it is a traditional, what people would consider an RV. And for me, it's you can call it an RV. For me, it'd be a survival vehicle because what I do is This is like my 20th year that I've done this. Every year I take off for a month and I leave South Florida with no itinerary. I just say, hey, it's 6 o'clock in the morning, I'm leaving tomorrow, and I'm heading west. Where I'm going, where I'll end up, where I'm sleeping tonight, and how, I'll never know. And that's the whole adventure. So I go on a 1-month adventure, and I actually go out looking for uncomfortable things to do, meaning I want to park and sleep in places that normally usually don't. Could be in somebody's front of their house at night. They don't even know I'm there.
You got balls.
And
especially in a place where everybody's, essentially armed.
Every night is an adventure. In fact, that's the whole fun. If it were up to me, I would do it every night. I live for that. And as a police officer, it's kind of cool too, because I know how police officers think. So I kind of know where to go and what to do and how to do it, knowing that as badass as this truck is, they're just going to say, wow, that's a cool truck. Little do they know that I'm sleeping in it and chilling and watching Netflix and eating and enjoying my life as I would in my apartment, because I have all the comforts in that vehicle, my survival vehicle. And I call it that is because I've, you ever heard shit hits the fan when the shit hits the fan? That's a new thing right now, especially.
Yeah, we called it COVID in Canada.
Your show's called something about a hurricane. What's the name of the hurricane?
It can't shovel hurricanes.
Which I want to know why. But in a hurricane situation, a disaster, people think that has to be an apocalyptic thing. Guess what? Every day, someone lives an apocalyptic episode. And I built my vehicle so that I can literally just go grab my keys, jump in my truck, put some gas in it, and go live and like I'd live normally any place I want for 2 weeks. I got enough water. I have enough food. I have comfortable fans and air conditioning, let's call it. I have all forms of living my life normal, including Netflix. Whatever you have in your house, my survival vehicle has. And then I will make it to that. So we can have a show about that. It's very cool. But credit doctors, hashtag Alex Fornet, and give us a call. I mean, I will speak to everybody. I will give you all the information you could ever want, and I live for that. So
you're amazing, man. I appreciate having you. I look forward to having a few more conversations with you. Also over beers, and I look forward to doing your podcast, man.
Thanks, man. I appreciate you having me.
Take it easy, brother.